Good afternoon. My name is Aivaras Abramovich. I am chairman of the board of Ukrainian Corporate Governance Academy. Today we're presenting the new edition of Code of Corporate Governance of Ukraine. The first edition was issued back in 2003. Obviously, some substantial changes took place since then, both in Ukraine and globally. And those changes are aimed at simplifying the structure and encouraging implementation of the best governance practices in our country. Back in 2018, National Securities Commission of Ukraine, together with our organization, Ukrainian Corporate Governance Academy, decided to make this new edition particularly aimed at listed companies in Ukraine. Without a substantial lineup of sponsors, donors, working groups, and obviously leadership of the project, this would not be possible. So I want to thank each and every participant of this magnificent effort. Such partners as IFC, SECO of Switzerland, USAID are crucially important for this project and overall for promoting good governance in our country. I'd like to take opportunity to thank all of them for contributing to the new edition of the code and also for continuous promotion of this reform in Ukraine. Today we have a new format, obviously because of the world we live in, because of the limitations that we face in meeting each other. So first we will start with a presentation of the code itself by an internationally renowned author, our friend, our professor, Richard Frederick. Then the team leader of the code, the one and only Taras Ivanishin, will step in and continue with another exciting presentation. And then two panel discussions will follow, very exciting ones in my view. First one with international experts with a global view in terms of why Ukraine needs this code. Adomas Audiskas, one of the founders of Ukrainian Corporate Governance Academy and board member at Ukrzheleznytsia, will take the lead on that discussion. And I will be moderating the second discussion, a very interesting one with very successful entrepreneurs in Ukraine with practical experiences on why good governance matters, why good governance is, in the eyes of Ukrainian entrepreneurs, is important. And therefore, we're ready to take off. So the floor is yours. Welcome, Richard Frederick.
Hello, everyone. I'm speaking to you from London, where I'm on lockdown because of the COVID crisis. I hope that you are all taking care of yourselves. I'm here to share my thoughts on the development of the Code of Corporate Governance that is the topic of this event. I'd like to say a few words on some aspects of the project. They are regarding first the process, second the results, and third the future. First, I'd like to say that the output that we aimed at was not just a document, a piece of paper. The product was in fact a process. I remember that when I was first approached by the UCGA and the Ukraine Securities Commission, that they wanted to get the project done in a scant 2.5 months. I knew it would be a huge challenge, and I remember saying that I preferred to take a longer time. Not just because it was a really tough deadline to meet, it was also because I wanted to allow people to take the time to reflect, debate, and discuss these important governance issues. In fact, I wanted to create a base of people within Ukraine who would be able to discuss these issues intelligently in the future. In the end, the code took far longer than we expected or wanted, but what I can say is that the longer process allowed people's ideas to mature. It also helped us create this base of individuals who are now incredibly expert in the area. In the end, what was supposed to take a few months extended out to almost 2 years. But what we have now is a new, well-constructed code, and in addition, we've created a group of experts who add significant expertise to Ukraine on the topic of corporate governance. Second, I'd like to say that the code that we're talking about today is modern, it's international, and it's up to date. It corresponds perfectly to best practice internationally. In developing the code, we looked at the best international codes and learned from them and produced something that was then adapted to the local situation. I think that for foreign investors, they will immediately see how Ukraine's code reflects best practice and is indeed on the cutting edge. By cutting edge, I mean that it's a progressive code. It covers new emerging areas that are very important, such as sustainability, the role of stakeholders in the enterprise, and the issue of anti-corruption. While developing the code, we also wanted to make it as readable and as useful as possible for the ultimate user, which is, of course, the company. If you want to change corporate governance, then of course we have to change the thinking of the people in the corporation, and those are the people who we anticipate will be reading it. The language of the new code is not legalistic, it's practical, and it gets right to the point. Each governance issue is discussed from four different perspectives. What is the goal of the governance practice? What does the law say that I have to do? What do we recommend that companies do on top of the law? And finally, we provide useful explanations and commentary and a discussion. In short, the code is designed to be quick, to the point, and interesting. Of course, it's not going to be like watching Top Gear or The Voice Kids on TV, but we tried to make the code as accessible as possible. Does it contain everything? Well, no, it doesn't. Does it give me detailed guidance on every issue that I want? Maybe not. This code is modular, and by this I mean that it sets out the broad outlines of issues which are then to be developed in further detail in the future in supplements to the code. So, for example, the code recommends that companies have audit committees, but it doesn't go into full details of how an audit committee should be organized, how it should be run, and how it should function. On the other hand, you can look forward to this kind of guidance in the future work of the UCGA. And it will cover not only issues of audit committees, but a whole palette or choice of other issues that are important in the future. So I hope that the users of the code will enjoy reading it and find it useful. I'd like to end by thanking everyone who was involved in the project and who helped us. There was lots of debate and lots of heartfelt enthusiasm. Of course, the work is not over, but what we have here is a major first step. I hope that in future we can maintain the enthusiasm that people showed in the past as we pursue the governance agenda in Ukraine. Finally, I'd like to thank UCGA and the Securities Exchange Commission for the willingness to be fresh and innovative. We need new, fresh, innovative thinking, new approaches. Thank you very much. Be safe and be healthy.
Okay, thank you, Ivaras. Thank you, Richard. Today, I would like to present a project that I led for almost 2 years, but it in more details. So I have to say that the code was an idea born long before the UCGA was founded. And to be honest, the project finished after I left UCGA as executive manager. So today I still want to present you a few slides on how the National Corporate Governance Code was created. To start with, what is our story? This is a joint project of UCGA and Securities Commission, and we strive to promote good corporate governance. At the beginning, we thought about a big policy project for companies to explain corporate governance. We thought that we could give them something practical that they could use in their business, so to say, a guide to grow. So the code was meant just like this. It is a handbook of global practices for companies to implement and to aspire to. So today, I want to snapshot you with only 4 points of the process. The first is, why do we need a code? What was our motivation? The second is, the process, as Richard mentioned correctly, the process was sometimes dense, sometimes too long, but in the end resulted with a great document. I would also like to talk about the result itself, the new code, and about our future plans. So for those of you who are in topic, you might know that Ukraine had principles of corporate governance that served as a standard, as a national standard since 2003. Since then, it was amended in 2014, and I have to say a bad year to be amended, because a year after, the G20 OECD principles were updated, which was 2015, so the principles, a year after they were adopted, already became outdated. So, our aim was to try to understand what was wrong with those principles. And it's not only that they are outdated. We noticed a range of other problems that prevented them from becoming a real, true national code. Why the principles were ignored. So when you got to read principles, the first thing you notice is that it has a complex and outdated wording, which prevents companies from grasping the essence of real corporate governance principles. We also notice that in Ukraine there is a lack of experience or even not at all experience with comply or explain enforcement. We also acknowledge the absence of active monitoring of those principles, that nobody really looked after if the principles were implemented or not. In addition, we had incapable investors who are uninformed, so they could not monitor the companies they invest in, and moreover, the inactive share markets. So that led us to a set of real challenges for companies, which were the fragmented corporate governance framework, the weak investor protection, low quality of company disclosures, low awareness of governance principles, and of course the enforcement challenges for Securities Commission. Now we do understand and agree that problems like this cannot be solved in short term. Problems like this also require a strong team. That's why from the very start we decided to build a team. Overall we got around 55 experts. The lead expert, Richard Frederick, that you already met, a Ukrainian advisory group and international advisory group working together on the same document. So we also realized that a project like this, a national project, requires partnerships. And we did make an important partnerships with experts, with institutions, with experts in the region. So IFC, Swiss State Secretary of Economic Affairs, and USAID became our partners. Each of the partners were pursuing the specific corporate governance issues. Those were the ESG principles, sustainable finance, anti-corruption, gender equality. And I have to say that each of those made the code even more complete. So when we came to drafting, we took as many international standards as possible. We had OECD principles of corporate governance, their guidances, we had IOSCO reports, we had IFC governance methodology, United Nations guidances, and GRI standards. Our main aim was for Ukraine to be adherent to international standards. Something is wrong with the slides again. Thank you. Of course, what kept us going is leadership, and as we really thank Richard, a globally renowned expert and author of the original OECD principles, for his leadership. He coordinated the whole group. He found a way to find a consensus between all of the experts. He dealt with comments, with ideas, sometimes with heated discussions and even conflicts. We had Ukrainian group working in offline meetings hosted by Securities Commission and included our international experts via online written rounds. We also had a professional translation, which I have to say was quite a challenge because Ukrainian linguistic capacity in corporate governance sphere is quite small. So the result of our project is today a core code that updates key pillars of corporate governance, which are the shareholder rights, governing bodies, disclosure and audit, and stakeholders. Today, we have a modern bilingual document in Ukrainian and English with a new structure, clearer and more user-friendly vocabulary and principles that are fully in accord with evolving global standards. So, how to use the code? As Richard said, each principle in the code is formed into a four-level structure. The goal, the intended outcome, the requirement, which is the law and regulations, recommendation, which is the best practice, and comments, which provides you with details and alternatives. Now let's take a look at the example. Now this is how an issue of board size looks in the code. So you have the goal when dealing with board size that board size should support the fulfillment of the board roles and responsibilities. Ukrainian law says that the minimum board size is 5. On the other hand, the best practice says that the board should have a minimum of 7 board members. And in the comments, you have the alternatives and some tips how to implement all of these. Now, this is a really elegant and understandable structure. So after reading it, you know what would be your next steps to improve governance in your company. Now, if you read the code, you may draw in it and write in it, so it becomes even simpler. Now, your code might look like this. Your aim, what law requires, the best practice, and now you know how to implement it. Now, I have to say that before its release, the code looked quite different. For example, my code looked like this. Sometimes we couldn't find the needed law. Sometimes we doubted if it was really the best practice. We struggled with Ukrainian translation, but with the advisory group we had, such problems were solved straight away. So, what's next? As Richard told, the core code is only the beginning of a big corporate governance reform. So, in the nearest future, we are planning to produce supplements and guidelines, and we need experts and partners for this. The supplements will focus on the most problematic issues for companies, like formation of an audit committee, the compliance, anti-corruption, how to govern remuneration of board members, guidelines for unlisted companies. So UCGA and Securities Commission appreciate that such experts as you participate in projects. We are ready to give you your voice, so please join us and let's do it together. The last thing I want to say is that I know how hard it is in the online pandemic world to stay focused, so I thank you for your attention. I now give the floor to my colleagues that are about to have a heated discussion on governance issues. Thank you once again.